In the quiet village of Gartley, life seems to revolve around two things: local gossip and the eccentric pursuits of Professor Braddock. Braddock is an archaeologist, a man whose mind is perpetually halfway between the present day and the ancient world. He is obsessed with funding a massive expedition to find the tomb of Queen Tahoser, and this obsession has created a palpable tension in his household. His stepdaughter, Lucy Kendal, is a spirited and independent young woman, but she finds herself caught in the middle of her stepfather's financial desperation. Archie Hope, a struggling but principled artist, is in love with Lucy. They are engaged, but their future is far from certain. In a village like Gartley, marriage is often seen as a practical arrangement, and there is a growing, unspoken pressure for Lucy to marry someone with more means, specifically Sir Frank Random, a wealthy and amiable soldier. While Archie represents a life of artistic struggle and genuine affection, Sir Frank represents the kind of social and financial stability that could solve all of Braddock's problems. The story begins with a sense of anticipation. Everyone is waiting for a shipment from Malta. The professor has been expecting the Green Mummy, a legendary Inca relic that he believes will cement his reputation in the world of archaeology. But when the heavy packing case finally arrives, the anticipation turns to pure horror. When the crate is opened, it doesn't contain an ancient relic. Instead, it holds the strangled corpse of Sidney Bolton, the man sent to guard the mummy. The mummy itself is gone, and in its place is a dead man. This moment shifts everything. The story moves from a quiet village drama into a dark, frantic murder mystery. As the investigation into Bolton's death begins, the mystery of the missing mummy deepens. It turns out that the relic wasn't just any mummy. It was the remains of the Inca ruler Caxus, stolen from his descendants in Peru 20 years ago. The arrival of Don Pedro de Gallangos, a dignified gentleman from Peru, brings the past crashing into the present. He has come to reclaim his ancestors' remains, but his arrival brings a much more dangerous secret to light. It is revealed that the mummy isn't just a historical treasure, it is a vessel for immense wealth. Hidden within the ancient bandages are two massive, priceless emeralds. Suddenly, the motive for the crime shifts. This isn't a case of scientific curiosity or a simple theft of an antiquity. This is about pure, murderous greed. The hunt for the emeralds turns Gartley into a place of shadows and deception. The web of lies begins to tighten around the central characters. We meet Mrs. Jasher, a flamboyant and seemingly wealthy widow who moves through the village with an air of importance. However, her social standing is a carefully constructed facade. She is actually a penniless adventuress, drowning in debt and looking for any way to secure her future. She eventually attempts to blackmail Sir Frank Random, hoping to use his reputation to cover her tracks. At the same time, a mysterious figure known as Captain Hervey begins to appear. He presents himself as a mercenary, a man with information about the theft of the mummy, but he is much more dangerous than he lets on. As the investigation proceeds, the layers of identity start to peel away. The group eventually discovers that Captain Hervey is actually Gustav Vasa, a notorious thief from Peru who has been operating under a false name. As the tension reaches a breaking point, the violence becomes more direct. A woman is spotted at Sidney Bolton's window, and a manuscript detailing the location of the emeralds is planted in Sir Frank Random's room in a clumsy attempt to frame him for the crime. The investigation is no longer just about finding a killer. It's about surviving a group of people who are all hiding something. The truth finally begins to unravel through a series of violent, unexpected turns. The characters are pushed to their limits, and the true nature of the people around them is laid bare. We see that the most dangerous person isn't the obvious thief or the desperate social climber, but the man who seemed most driven by academic passion. The mastermind behind the chaos is Professor Braddock. His obsession with his expedition had long ago curdled into a desperate criminal greed. He had conspired with his loyal servant, a man named Cockatoo, to steal the emeralds. Cockatoo, a Kanaka man whose devotion to the professor was absolute and almost primal, became the physical instrument of the professor's will. It was Cockatoo who murdered Sidney Bolton to facilitate the theft, and it was Cockatoo who later killed Mrs. Jasher when she became a liability and a witness to their crimes. The climax of the story takes place in a chaotic, high-stakes confrontation at a jetty. A trap has been set to catch the fugitives, and the air is thick with the threat of violence. During a moment of intense distraction, orchestrated by the opportunistic Gustav Vasa, the criminals attempt to make their escape. In the confusion and the darkness, a shot is fired. It isn't a clean, heroic shot that solves the mystery. It is a moment of pure, accidental fate. The bullet strikes Professor Braddock, killing him instantly. In a grim twist of irony, he dies inside the very mummy case he had been using to hide his crimes. With the professor dead, the remaining pieces of the puzzle fall into place. Cockatoo is captured and eventually executed for his murders. The threat to the village is gone, but the scars left behind are deep. The story ends with a sense of quiet resolution for the survivors. Archie and Lucy, having survived the terror that gripped Gartley, finally find the peace they were looking for. They marry and move away to the south of France, seeking a life far removed from the shadows of the professor's house. But the trauma of the events follows them. Lucy is left with a lifelong psychological aversion to the colour green, a permanent, haunting reminder of the green mummy and the darkness that once sat at her very dinner table. When we look back at the story, there is a lot to unpack regarding how Fergus Hume uses the concept of the MacGuffin. The green mummy itself acts as the engine of the plot. It is an object that bridges the ancient past with modern-day greed. Initially, it represents scientific discovery and the pursuit of knowledge, but as the truth comes out, it becomes a symbol of desecration. The physical act of cutting into the mummy to find the emeralds mirrors the moral decay of the characters. The characters aren't just looking for treasure, they are literally tearing into the past to satisfy their present-day hunger. There is also a striking contrast between the civilized world and the savage one that permeates the book. We see this in the way characters like Mrs. Jasher use the trappings of high society to mask their desperation and criminality. Her facade of wealth is a mask, much like the aliases used by Gustav Vasa. In many ways, the civilized characters, the academics and the social climbers, are the ones driven by the most predatory instincts. The theme of identity and deception is woven throughout the entire narrative. Almost every character is wearing a mask. Braddock masks his greed with scientific obsession. Mrs. Jasher masks her poverty with social status. Gustav Vasa masks his criminal history with a military persona. The mystery isn't just about who did it, but about who are these people, really? Interestingly, the resolution of the story avoids the traditional, polished ending of many Victorian mysteries. There is no grand intellectual showdown where the detective explains everything in a drawing room. Instead, the resolution comes through accident and chaos. The death of Professor Braddock is a sudden, messy, and somewhat accidental event. This gives the story a more visceral, perhaps even nihilistic, feeling. It suggests that in the pursuit of such immense, ancient wealth, the result isn't a grand justice, but a chaotic collision of human flaws. Ultimately, The Green Mummy is a study of how quickly the veneer of respectability can crack when faced with the promise of sudden, life-changing wealth. It's a story where the lines between the explorer and the thief, the scholar and the murderer, become dangerously blurred. While the romantic threads of Archie and Lucy provide a sense of hope, the lasting image is one of a psychological scar, a reminder that some things, once unearthed, can never be truly put back into their boxes.